Embarrassing, pathetic, disappointing. These are all words that could totally be used to describe the Red Sox performance this weekend as they got swept at home by the Toronto Blue Jays in hopes of bouncing back against the Royals.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling Podcast, here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox Monday through Friday on this gloomy Monday with the Red Sox just having a really pretty awful series at home against Toronto. Going to be touching on what went wrong in that series on today's show, as well as go over a couple of key roster moves that took place over the weekend, as well as the Alex Verdugo incident that happened on Saturday. So lots to get into on this episode, but I need to start off by saying, what are the Red Sox doing? This was such a crucial series, arguably the most important series of the season so far to solidify yourself in the wild card race. And this team just comes out completely flat and can't even take one game at home against a Blue Jays team that they've played so well against this season, because prior to this series, the Red Sox had been 7-0 against Toronto on the season. And that's a vast change from last year, when they really couldn't win a lot of games against AL East opponents, and that ended up being their downfall last year. And they come in to this series after struggling on the West Coast in hopes that they would be back home and turn it around. And then they go and get swept and drop even further down into the wild card standings. Now they are 5 games out of a wild card spot. If they had taken 1 or 2 of these games, they could have been in a lot better spot. But now Toronto gained significant ground on them, and it's going to be very, very difficult to make up that 5 games. I'm not saying it's impossible, and I am not saying the season is completely over, but it's hard to not feel some type of way about what took place this weekend and the Red Sox chances. They have the Royals coming up next. Absolutely have to win that series at a minimum, but preferably sweep and take all 4 games would be preferred. No excuses. Absolutely have to win that series against the Royals, but such a number of things went wrong in this series against Toronto. The pitching was just an absolute disaster. I mean, Chris Murphy, I felt bad for him on Sunday, really got rocked. Went 2 1/3 innings, gave up 7 hits and 6 earned runs with 2 walks thrown in the mix and 3 Ks. Also giving up a home run in that frame as well. And Llovera also did not look good. He gave up 5 earned runs over 1.1 innings pitched with 3 hits and 2 walks. So those two together did not look good on Sunday, giving up the bulk of the Red Sox runs. And also James Paxton, I mean, he really didn't have it on Friday, kept getting absolutely killed with the long ball. He went 5 innings, which is a pretty short start for what James Paxton has been averaging this season. He gave up 9 hits and 4 earned runs, but the problem was he kept getting absolutely killed with the long ball, like I said, kept giving up home runs. And once that game, became 3-0, with him giving up those home runs, I was like, all right, it's very clear that Paxton doesn't have it tonight, so let's just not stretch him out, which Cora, luckily enough, didn't do. But it just was too much, and the Red Sox were unable to come back from it. And it was irritating. It was very irritating. And Nick Pivetta on Saturday gave up 3 earned runs over 4 innings of work on 6 hits, and also allowed 2 walks and struck out 2. That's not terrible, but it's certainly not the best we've seen from Pivetta out of the pen this season. So he was definitely a little shaky on Saturday. So overall, the combination of all of those pitchers just really, really did not look good, and the Red Sox just were unable to capitalize on opportunities they had offensively. They stranded numerous base runners in Friday night's game, and that is really also what stood out to me about that game is they had chances and were unable to capitalize. So that could have been a winnable game, and it was just very, very frustrating to see them leave so many runners on base. Saturday, same thing, couldn't capitalize with runners on base, and that was very, very irritating to see. And they also just still lack of fundamentals. It blows my mind that it's August, and at this point in the season, this team is still making the same fundamental mistakes that they've made early on in the season. I mean, Reese McGuire, this is a huge example of the Red Sox lacking fundamentals. He made a base running mistake on Saturday that ultimately ended the game. So basically what happened was Connor Wong hit a deep fly ball like right into the gap. I thought that it was going to be a home run, to be fair, because from first glance it looked like it might have been gone. Reese McGuire was on second, and as soon as Connor Wong made contact with that, Reese was off. Like he had already rounded third when the ball was caught and was heading towards home. So all the Blue Jays had to do was double him up at second base. And that's frustrating. I get that he might have thought it was a home run, but you really, really need to remain on the side of caution with that stuff. So that way, if he does catch it, you head back to the base. So that was an example of just the Red Sox still lacking fundamentals. They make a lot of base running mistakes. That it's been happening all season, and it's really incredibly frustrating that they still make those same mistakes, because why have they not been addressed? It's just very, very just frustrating. And defensively, they did not look super sharp on Sunday. Duran could have made a play on a George Springer ground rule double that was hit into the gap. And that would have been the end of the inning and changed the momentum of the game, because if he catches that, there were 2 outs, that ends the inning. The game is still tied moving forward. And at that point, you never really know what's going to happen. So that was another thing that frustrated me about Sunday's game, was that Duran play, or lack thereof, not making a play on the Springer double. I get it was a little bit of a funky play, but he could have hustled a little bit more and made the play. And that just ultimately resulted in this huge spiral effect of the Red Sox just giving up so many runs and just completely unraveling, right before our eyes at that game. I unfortunately was at the game on Sunday and had to watch live whatever that mess was that we saw on Sunday, but ultimately it was just so many of the little things that have been haunting them all season coming back to haunt them again. And it's just crazy. I don't know that I've seen another baseball team that lacks fundamentals as like much as the Boston Red Sox do. Like, I am just so shook by the fact that they continue to make these same mistakes over and over again, and nobody's fixing anything. So overall, a very, very bad series. That's certainly forgettable. There's not really much to say because not much good came out of that series, but they really need to just bounce back, because having the Royals on the schedule next is an absolute gift. I'm not shutting the door completely on the season, but they made it very, very difficult for themselves to get back into the race. And it's just unfortunate because they seem to have so much momentum and seems to have been figuring it out. And then now they're just slipping right back into their old ways. So were they ever changed, or was it just a fluke of good play? We've been asking this question all season long, and it's definitely irritating to continue to go through this. Coming up, I'm going to be discussing a couple key roster moves that took place over the weekend and what those roster moves really mean for the Red Sox and why it made sense for them to do what they did with those roster moves. So I'm going to be touching on that next. We've all had situations where we've been in a tight pinch financially. I know for me, shortly after I was laid off from ESPN, when my rent was due, I was constantly checking my bank account to make sure that I had the money to pay for the rent, because, it was a tough time and I was looking for another job, and, getting that unemployment income just wasn't really enough for what I was looking for. So it was kind of a scary and stressful time. And whether it's that extreme or not, I'm sure you've had a situation where you need a little financial help. That's why Dave is great. Dave can get you cash when you need a hand between paychecks and can help you build credit by settling extra cash advances on time. Dave is the banking app that's leveling the financial playing field. When you download Dave, you could get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. It's part of Dave's extra cash account. Advance the money you need with no interest and then settle up later. Download Dave today at dave.com/MLB. That's dave.com/MLB. You could get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. Download the Dave app now or go to dave.com/MLB. For terms and conditions, go to dave.com/legal. Eligibility criteria and instant transfer fees apply. Banking services provided by Evolve, member FDIC. Go to dave.com/MLB and get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less when you download Dave. For terms, visit dave.com/legal. It truly, truly can be a game changer. There's not much worse than feeling like you're in a financial pinch and having to stress about it. So definitely download Dave. And just, you can get so much money from it. So definitely recommend having it to assist you. So over the weekend, the Red Sox made a couple notable roster moves that I think are very, very important to talk about and note because they could really impact the Red Sox moving forward. So the first notable roster move that took place was the Red Sox activated Luis Urías from AAA, who they acquired at the trade deadline and traded away a pitching prospect for him. So they called him up, and as a result, as expected, they DFA'd Christian Arroyo in the process. And to me, that needed to happen. It came as absolutely no surprise that they did that. He really has been struggling this season in terms of just being able to put anything together at the plate. He was hitting .241 with a .268 on base percentage, but he had 45 strikeouts and recorded 24 RBIs, 47 hits, and 3 home runs. And the problem was he could never get that big hit. He would string together hits, but a lot of times it was at inopportune times when the Red Sox, didn't necessarily need a hit. And in the situations where he was at the plate and the Red Sox really needed somebody to come through and deliver with a big hit, you could never really rely on Arroyo a lot for that this season. And defensively, he was decent, but not the best. He definitely made some fair share of errors in the field. So the Red Sox DFA'd him. He went unclaimed on waivers. So as a result, that basically means he just gets optioned to AAA Worcester. And that to me is a good idea because something about the season Arroyo's had, there's just something that's not clicking. And if he can go to AAA and kind of figure that out, then maybe he could get another chance at some point. But this is Urias' time to really prove that he deserves and can handle a permanent spot on this roster because the middle infield is starting to shape out now to be a little bit better. And especially with Trevor Story right on the way, likely in this upcoming series here against the Royals, there might not be a spot for Urias, if he can't prove that he's more valuable than like Yu Chang or Pablo Reyes, because when Story is ready to go and be activated, somebody's going to have to go. And my guess would be that they send another middle infielder, just like they did with Arroyo. I used to like Arroyo a lot. I thought he was a good player who provided a lot of value for this team. But at this point, because of how much he struggled, it made a lot of sense to me as to why the Red Sox did that and felt the need to, let him go. And maybe he can work on things in AAA and kind of get back to being where he was. But this season, he was definitely not, playing up to par. So we'll see what happens with Urias. I'm really holding out hope that he can be a longer-term valuable option. I mean, the Brewers wanted to get rid of him, which is a bit of a red flag. He was hitting 145 for Milwaukee this season and had a problem with injuries. So hopefully he pans out. I mean, my expectations are pretty low, but, whether he contributes this year doesn't necessarily matter because they have Story coming back, but hopefully they can develop him and justify why they traded for him at the trade deadline. So we'll see what happens, but I'm rooting for Arroyo too. I hope he can really just improve in AAA and kind of figure out what went wrong this season because as a person, I think he's a really good guy, it seems like, and he brings good spirits to the locker room. So definitely wishing for the best for him. So the Red Sox made another notable roster move after Saturday's game. They optioned Joe Jacques back to AAA and called up Nick Robertson, who they actually acquired from the Dodgers when they traded Kike Hernandez. Jacques has been struggling a bit this year. He was 2-1 with a 5.85 ERA and recorded 14 strikeouts over 17 appearances. He did pitch the 9th inning on Saturday and gave up 1 earned run on 2 hits with 2 walks. So he really was shaky on Saturday. So after that game, they sent him back down to AAA and brought Robertson up. Robertson did pitch in the game on Sunday. He gave up 1 earned run on 1 hit. So it wasn't really bad. He looked okay. I mean, he's probably, warming up to being in a completely different environment because Boston and LA are such vastly different places and vastly different fan bases that we're dealing with. So that's going to take some getting used to for him. But Jacques, to me, is a weak link in the bullpen, and he was struggling to figure it out. I think he was given a long enough span to try to prove himself and figure things out, but he couldn't. So that made sense to me. If they wanted to give Robertson a chance at the major league level, Jacques was the one to me that had to go down because he was definitely struggling. And what I, am concerned with is if Robertson does struggle, that's going to all go back to the Red Sox not acquiring a pitcher at the trade deadline and getting some more help, because the depth is great, but the depth only works well if your pitchers are strong. So if Robertson comes in and doesn't have as much of an ability to be able to expand his outings and, pitch a few innings, then the Red Sox are going to have to look into other options. And yes, I know that Sale, Houck, and Whitlock are coming back, but if I'm being honest with you, I'm not trusting Sale to be healthy at all, really. He hasn't given me a reason to feel confident that he can actually return and play for a long period of time without getting injured again. So I'm not really banking too much on him. Huge fan of Houck and Whitlock. I hope they can continue to develop their longevity and be able to offer, length when it comes to games that they are playing in. But this Robertson move could be huge for the Red Sox in the future because he's still very much like developing. Like he spent a lot of time in AAA this year. So the Red Sox could see him as a piece for the future, which I like. And if that's the case, then just continue to develop him, work on developing his game, and see what he can provide. Because, the Red Sox were able to turn around Kike for a couple strong prospects that have been playing well in AAA. So hopefully he can kind of be of value and contribute. Jacques being sent down to AAA made the most sense to me because he really just has not been able to figure it out at the major league level this year. So go back down and figure it out in AAA again, and then maybe he can come back to us with a more polished approach to his game on the mound. Coming up, I'm going to be talking about Alex Verdugo. There was an incident with him on Saturday. So I'm going to be going into that next and talking about it and essentially why it happened. BetterHelp is basically a great site that you can use to kind of get therapy or get guidance on what's the right path to take if you're struggling with something. It's all just a great way to feel like if you're making a big decision on a career path or settling down with somebody or not knowing if the person you're dating is right for you, BetterHelp really, really can help you because they have a lot of good resources to use. So definitely look into BetterHelp. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/LockedOnMLB today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnMLB. It's always nice to have resources to go to. It can be a little bit scary when you don't and you feel misguided or feel like you don't really have the help around you. So definitely check out BetterHelp because they can really, really help set you up for success and find that happiness that you've been looking for. So, has Alex Cora lost the Red Sox clubhouse? This question has been seeming to go around lately on social media, and it's definitely something to think about. I think Cora is really trying to do the best he can with the players that he was given. But on Saturday, Alex Verdugo supposedly, according to reports, showed up late to Fenway on Saturday for the game, and he was originally supposed to start in the game, but was a late scratch. Alex Cora pulled him from the lineup about 2 hours before first pitch. And he said, basically, this is a managerial decision. Like, it was discipline based, and that was really all he went into at first for details, and basically said it was my decision to bench him. Like, the team needs to be 100%. Everybody needs to show up and be there on time, giving maximum effort. And that just didn't happen on Saturday. So then it came out that he was late to the ballpark, and I guess Cora was unpleased, so he benched him. This is the second time that Cora has benched Verdugo this season. There was another incident where Cora thought he wasn't hustling enough down the first baseline and ended up recording an out. And so in order to teach him that he should be hustling more, Cora benched him. I get that Cora's trying to be, the disciplinarian and basically let the guys know, like, you need to be focused and come every day and give 100%. Like, I get the idea of that, but benching Verdugo for these two actions could really, really kill the team vibe, because if you're a manager, you want to spread positive vibes around the clubhouse. And if this really gets in Verdugo's head and he continues to not perform up to par, this could be part of the reason for it, because we've seen Verdugo really significantly struggle since the All-Star break. He's been, stringing together some hits a little more lately. Recorded 3 hits on Sunday against the Blue Jays, so that was good. But what if that's part of the reason for his struggles recently? Like, what if Cora's getting in his head? And this is speculation from me, so don't, go and report this as if I said this is true. I just feel like, what if Cora and Verdugo have been having tension all season, and it's really mentally like taking a toll on Verdugo, because that type of thing can be mentally taxing and hard to make you focus after. So is benching him really the right thing to do? Like, is that really going to get a lot out of him? Like, I think obviously you should be talking to players about their actions if you're a manager. Like, any coach of a sport should be responsible for making sure that the athletes are giving 100%. And if they're not, that definitely needs to be addressed. But by benching him, you're making him, publicly humiliated, maybe in a way, in front of the whole team. And you're publicly raising a problem that you have with this player for the public to talk about and the fan base to overanalyze and be like, wow, like, he's benching Verdugo again. Like, there's definitely something going on there. And if all of that's happening, like, it could get other players to be like, wow, like, is he going to bench me for something? Like, what if I don't make a play correctly in the field? Or what if, like, I'm not hitting well and then, keep recording outs? Or what if I do something that isn't up to standard according to what Cora wants? Like, players could start asking those questions. And if they're asking those questions, it could affect their performance, in which case then the whole team's performance might go down as a whole. And to me, managing is one of the most important reasons for a successful Major League Baseball team. If you are unable to connect with your clubhouse and really get to know your players, then the vibe surrounding the team might just not be as good. And I worry that Cora may have lost some of those connections, because if other players are seeing him bench Verdugo, they might be like, wow, like, I can't do anything wrong. And then they might start to overthink and get in their heads, and their performances go down. So I do feel like part of the reason Verdugo has struggled is because of this situation, because like it can't be easy to be in the back of your head and saying like, oh, like what if I do something wrong and Cora wants to bench me again? And I just feel like there might be some issues between the two of them, but I think there's a better way to handle it than benching somebody twice for something, because I just don't know how effective that is. And I really, really hope that Cora knows what he's doing and this doesn't backfire long term on the team, and that people are still able to perform and have that good clubhouse vibe. Because if the results start to go down and everybody as a team is starting to, maybe not hit well or just not perform, like it could be a lingering thought in the back of their heads, like, well, we watched you bench our teammate and scrouch him from the lineup 2 hours before game time. Like my spot isn't secured or guaranteed either. So it could just be a spiral effect in that way. And for Verdugo personally, I really hope that mentally this isn't too taxing on him, because it can be so hard to pull yourself out of that state. And baseball is such a mental game, which makes it, probably the hardest professional sport to play. You need to really, really be mentally focused and sound 100% of the time during a game, or you will not play well and it will show. So I hope that Verdugo is able to kind of brush this off and continue playing baseball the way that he knows how. But I am inclined to feel like there might be some tension going on between him and Cora that nobody knows about, that isn't coming out publicly, but is deteriorating his performance in the process on the field. So I think Cora needs to figure out a better way when it comes to the disciplinary side to let the guys know if they do something that's not okay, that they're doing that, but also still like do it in a way where it'll help boost their performance. And so I think Cora lacks a little bit of knowledge of oh, like how should I handle this when things aren't going well for a player? And I think he's great at elevating his team and lifting everybody's spirits when they're playing well. And I think the clubhouse vibes are strong at that point, but when they're going through a tough time or they're losing games, it seems difficult for him to really collectively pull them out of that as a unit and say, hey, how can we move forward from this? So I'm interested in seeing how he and Verdugo move forward from this, but I hope that it's a smaller issue than what I'm saying. But I think I don't agree with the way that Cora handled it. I think, he had the right idea of saying, if you're going to be late to the ballpark, you're not going to play today. But I think it should have been handled much better. Well, unfortunately, the Red Sox just really couldn't get the job done over the weekend, but they absolutely have to bounce back starting tonight against the Royals. A sweep would be ideal, but at a minimum, win the series, because that is such an incredibly beatable team. And if they can't win that series, then the season 100% is over. I'm throwing it in the towel. So just take care of business against the Royals, get back on track, forget about the series and keep moving forward. You still have, the advantage on the season over Toronto. So just keep moving forward and try to win some games. That's all I can really say. Keep the faith as best as you can. I know it's really, really hard to do that right now, but I'm going to try with you. Let's go Red Sox as always. I'll catch you all on the flip side. Take care.